He said it so softly it almost sounded kind. "We're demoting you, Maya. It'll free up budget." I blinked at the glass wall behind Ethan, at the way the city looked like a painting through the blinds. I could see the tall buildings and the moving cranes and people far below, but I didn't feel connected to any of it. I was stuck in this room with a cold cup of coffee, a folder of notes, and a smile on a face that had practiced bad news. His. Marla was there too, the CFO. She kept her hands folded over a thin folder like it was a shield. Her nails were perfect. Her voice stayed even. "It's not personal," she said, and the words floated in the air like confetti that never landed. "We've loved your work on Stonewell Foods, Maya, but the budget lines moved. You know how it is." I looked down at my notebook. The last thing I'd written was a line for a new campaign. A sweet, simple idea. Real food, real people, real time. Now my own time was being broken up and sent somewhere I couldn't see. "You're keeping Stonewell without me?" I asked, quiet. It wasn't really a question. I could already see it in their eyes. This was not a trial balloon. This was a decision. Ethan gave a sympathetic tilt of his head. His tie was too tight. He loved wearing ties that said something about him, smart, sharp, always in control. "We're reassigning day-to-day. You'll still be here. You'll support. But the lead, going to Marcus. He has, enterprise experience." Enterprise experience. Funny phrase. The first time I met Stonewell's team, their enterprise was a loud factory in the valley with a grinding line that shook the floor, a head of security who called me ma'am, and a row of vending machines that ate quarters. The brand director, Noah, was wearing a hoodie and tired eyes. The CFO, Vivian, had a stack of binders and a gaze that could slice through a lie like it was paper. Enterprise experience. I earned mine at midnight, with hairnets and safety goggles, writing copy at a folding table while the night shift brought me coffee. "I built that relationship," I said. It slipped out of me. Not a brag, a fact. The kind you say when the ground moves and you reach for whatever will hold you up. Ethan spread his hands, palms up. "You did great. We just have to free up budget." Budget, such a clean word. No stains, no edges. It didn't say, "We want your client." It didn't say, "We want your time without paying for what it's worth." It didn't say, "We think you'll stay quiet." Budget was a bath towel thrown over a fire, hopping no one would see the smoke. If you've ever had a moment like that, you know the split it creates. There's the part of you in the room, nodding, breathing, swallowing hard. And then there's the part of you that floats above it all and starts counting. Counting the late nights, counting the deliverables, counting the ways you were asked to give and give and give more. The floating part of me was making a list with no end. Before I take you deeper into this, before I tell you how their plan unraveled, I want you with me. Smash that like button right now, subscribe to this channel, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. Because what happened next wasn't just a loss, it was a lesson. And I promise you, it won't end the way they planned. "I'll need a handover," I said, steady. "Stonewell has a review Tuesday. Noah expects me." Marla nodded. "We'll handle communications. HR will reach out about your new title." Title? The word tasted like cardboard. The letters rearranged themselves in my head until they spelled what they meant. Take less, be quiet, say thank you anyway. "When did you decide?" I asked. Not because I needed the date. I wanted the truth, and sometimes it hides inside little things like calendar invites. Ethan's eyes flicked to the corner of the room, to the clock that never kept the right time. "We've been looking at this for a while. It's just timing." I thought of all the good jobs he'd said to me lately. How he'd started copying other directors on emails that used to go only to me. How he'd invite forwarded meetings, so I didn't see them on my calendar, and then later caught me up with a smile that didn't touch his eyes. "I see," I said. The meeting ended with a printed memo. It had my new roles spelled out in a clean font. Support, not lead. Assist, not own. Provide, not decide. I slid the paper into my folder and stood up. My knees felt off like I was walking on a boat. I didn't shake Ethan's hand, and I didn't apologize to Marla for something that wasn't mine to carry. I thanked them for the clarity. Then I walked out. The hallway was bright and cold. People were laughing near the kitchen. Someone shook almonds into a bowl. The interns were trying to figure out the fancy espresso machine we never had time to use. Life moved on, even when something inside you stopped. At my desk, I opened my laptop. Stonewell. My folders were lined up: product launch, budget scopes, media plan, crisis comms. I knew the order without looking. The files were like fingerprints. I built them in the order problems came and how we solved them. There were notes no one else would understand. There were relationships a calendar invite couldn't replace. There were the small things, too. The joke about Noah's sneaker collection, the way Vivian preferred emails with bullet points, the time I stayed late with their plant manager to rewrite a safety sign that was confusing. Things you don't put in a statement of work. Things you only learn by showing up. An email pinged. Subject, welcome, Marcus. The team was copied. There were balloons emojis in the body. Marcus will be stepping in to lead Stonewell, Ethan wrote. Maya will support during transition. Let's give him a warm welcome. I read it twice, not because I didn't understand, but because there was a heavy heat in my chest and I needed it to cool before I stood up. I didn't want to give him a show. I stood anyway. I walked to the window. The city looked different now. It always does when something that held you up gets taken away. I remembered the first time I walked into Northbridge, the light, the clean lines, the way I believed there was a place for people who worked hard and did the right thing. I believed that good work spoke for itself. I believed a lot of things. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Noah. 3 words, "You good, Maya?" My eyes burned. Of course he would sense it. He had that talent. You don't last long as a brand director without feeling the weather before it breaks. I typed, "All good, congrats on the review Tuesday." He replied with a winking emoji and said, "Got you on speed dial if it gets weird." I stared at the screen. I didn't say I had been told I was now support. I didn't say that Marcus would be emailing him shortly. I didn't say what I suspected, that our trust was about to be tested by people who thought relationships were simple things you could move from one slide to another. I shut my laptop and went to the bathroom. The mirror was too close, the light too honest. I washed my face and counted to 10. When I came back to my desk, Marcus was there. He had a nice smile. He was new. He offered his hand. "Excited to work with you," he said. There was a nervous energy about him I recognized. He wasn't the villain. He was a piece on the board. I shook his hand. It wasn't his fault he'd been handed a life raft shaped like my role. "I'll send a handover doc," I said. "Stonewell's a lot of moving parts. They respond to clarity and honesty." "Totally," he said. "Ethan said you'd fill me in." I met his eyes. I wanted to say he's been filling in a lot lately. Instead, I nodded. "We'll do it right." As the day turned, the office light warmed and then dimmed. People put on coats and said goodnight. My screen glowed on my face. I started building a handover doc with unfair detail, not because I wanted to make this easy for them, but because I wanted to do right by Stonewell. I listed contacts and nuances. I wrote, "Vivian prefers early numbers before she makes a call. Don't send slides without a summary." I wrote, "Noah will ask one last question at the end. It's always the real one. Answer that before you leave the room." I wrote, "Never promise what you can't deliver by Friday." And I wrote, "If something feels off, it is. Fix it now." By the time I hit save, I realized something. This was not a farewell. It was a map, and I wasn't handing it to them. I was handing it to myself. Because if they thought a title could take away what I knew, they didn't understand who they were dealing with. I packed my bag. The cleaners were running vacuums around the rows of desks. My phone vibrated again. A new email, this time from HR. Subject, role transition. I didn't open it. Not yet. There's a moment before you step into a storm when the air is soft and still. I wanted one more breath of that. On the way out, I passed the trophy shelf. Plaques, awards, campaigns we had celebrated with catered food and clapping hands. One of them had my name in small print at the bottom. I touched the glass with one finger and smiled. They could change my title, but they couldn't take the work out of me. Outside, the evening was blue and kind. The city hummed. I stood there on the sidewalk with a tote bag that felt heavier than usual and raised my head to the sky. I did not cry. I did not call anyone. I let the cold air kiss my face, and I made myself a promise in a voice I could only hear inside. If they wanted to free up budget, I would free up something else. I would free up the truth. And I would let the numbers tell the story no one could ignore. You want to know what happened next, don't you? How the first piece slipped. How the thing they were sure they could hold started to slide right out of their hands. I'll take you back to the start to show you why this mattered so much. Why Stonewell wasn't just a client, and why what they tried to do was more than a budget move. It was a bet against my character, and they were about to realize they misread the odds. Before the demotion, before the meeting with the blinds half closed and the coffee gone cold, there was the world I built day by day. It didn't look like much. It wasn't a movie set. It was early mornings and late nights, long drives to a factory off the highway, and 100 small choices to tell the truth faster than the discomfort could find me. That's how Stonewell Foods became more than a logo on a pitch deck. That's how it became mine. I still remember the first time I drove to the plant. The GPS sent me past the city edge, where the skyline turns into big box stores and the streets lose their shine. The plant sat low and serious behind a chain-link fence. A guard checked my ID and waved me through. Inside, the hum hit me constant, steady like a heartbeat. People in hairnets moved with purpose. The air smelled like yeast and pepper and metal. It felt alive. Noah met me near the shipping dock. He looked like he hadn't slept. "We've got a launch in 4 weeks," he said. "We're late, we need help." Late was an understatement. The packaging wasn't final. The digital plan had holes. Someone had promised a shelf date that made no sense. The line was moving, but the story was. I didn't judge. I rolled up my sleeves and asked the questions. Who needs what? By when? What can move? What can't? He looked at me like he was deciding whether to trust me with a secret. "We've been burned," he said. "People promise, then they go quiet, or they send juniors who don't know our world." "I'm here," I said, simple words, but I meant them. "I'll be here when I say I will, and I'll tell you the truth even when it's not pretty." That day, I made friends with the plant manager, a woman named Kiana with a 1,000-yard stare and a laugh that came out like a secret she finally let herself tell. When the line jammed, I stood with her and watched the mechanics work. I learned the names of the people who made everything happen. I learned how long it took to change a roll. I learned that when you respect the hands that make the thing respects you back. At night, I went home and wrote copy with the sound of the machines still in my head. The words came easy because they were honest. Real food, real time, real people. Noah loved it. Vivian didn't praise easily, but she didn't poke holes in it either. She asked what it would cost and what it would earn. When I answered with care and math, she nodded once. We were in. Northbridge liked the wins. They liked how quickly Stonewell moved from watch list to growth. They liked the way our campaign made their end-of-quarter slide look clean and strong. There were dinners with cheers and photos from an angle that made plates look artful and hands look important. I wore a dress I could breathe in. I smiled for the camera because the team was happy and we had earned it. But the real moments that mattered were always smaller. There was the time a storm knocked out power at the plant and we had to move a chute. The agency wanted to charge a change order. I got on the phone with the crew and we found a way to shift to daylight, no penalty. I sent the savings to Vivian with a 1-line email. She called me back and said, "You speak my language." I told her, "No, I just don't like making people pay for our mistakes." There was the recall scare, when a rumor started on social media and our phones lit up like a fire. I stood in the hallway and texted responses while a junior designer printed new packaging copy. We didn't push back on the concern. We thanked people for caring. We showed them the process. We shared a video from the plant, Kiana explaining a safety step in her own words. It blew up in the best way. People saw the faces behind the name. They trusted us because we let them see. Noah hugged me at the end of that day, and I let myself feel it. Not the hug, the relief, the sense that what we did mattered. And through it all, I kept my promises inside the agency. I sent briefs early. I made timelines fair. I shielded my team when a client panic threatened to land on the wrong backs. I made sure every deck had room for the junior who pulled an all-nighter. I took the hard calls so they wouldn't grow into fires. It wasn't hero work. It was the job. But it was a version of the job that required you to care more than the average person without showing it all the time. Ethan noticed. At first, it was good. He looped me into bigger meetings. He said my name in rooms I wasn't in. He pulled me aside after a presentation and said, "You have a touch, don't lose it." I went home that night feeling seen. It's a dangerous feeling if you're not careful. Then the shine wore thin. Ethan started asking for my decks the night before. He'd clean them up. The next morning, a few slides would have been rearranged and my name would be smaller in the footer. It's a small thing, right? Fonts, footers. But small things tell you where you stand. He started using phrases I wrote as if he'd always said them. He started telling me to bring support to meetings I had once led without blinking. "Let's show them depth," he'd say, and show up late, then field questions like he'd heard the answers before. I tried to ignore it. I told myself it doesn't matter who says the words as long as the work is done. I told myself the client knows, and they did. Noah texted me after one meeting and wrote, "You were the brain and the spine in there. You always are." I saved that text. Not to reread on bad days, though I did that too. I saved it because it was evidence of what was true. Vivian called me out of the blue once, not to talk budgets, but to ask about a choice we'd made in our plan. "I saw you gave up a column buy in exchange for a longer digital run," she said. "Walk me through it." I did. I talked about reach and recall and the way Stonewell's audience actually behaved. The call ran long. At the end, she said, "One more thing, don't let anyone make you small." Then she hung up. I kept her words like a stone in my pocket, warm, heavy, real. But in the office, the drift continued. I'd get invited to a meeting 30 minutes after it started. I'd get thanked in a group email for work I hadn't been asked to review but was expected to defend. I'd call it out now and then. "I need to be in those rooms," I'd say. "If the decisions are about my accounts, I need to see them happen." Ethan would smile, the tight tie, the controlled expression. "Totally," he'd say. "Calendar got messy. We'll fix it." We never fixed it. Meanwhile, Stonewell kept asking for me. Noah would send me memes that made no sense to anyone but us. He'd text me a photo of a new label and say, "Tell me this doesn't scream Saturday morning." I'd send him back a voice note with a line to try. We had a rhythm you can't fake. Vivian would email me a spreadsheet and ask if the assumptions felt fair. I'd send back my notes, no fluff. That's what trust looks like when you're building something on a deadline with people who care and people who measure. It looks like different languages that somehow speak to each other because the translation is respect. Around the same time, Northbridge landed a flashy tech client, the kind that posts pictures of neon signs and calls it culture. Ethan got stars in his eyes. He wanted to put his name on it. He started moving resources around. Everyone felt the shift. The joke in the kitchen was that if the tech client sneezed, 10 people ran for a tissue. Stonewell didn't sneeze. They worked. They paid bills on time. They grew. They were steady and serious, like that humming line on the plant floor. But in a world that loves shine, steady can be mistaken for safe, and safe gets taken for granted. I saw the choice coming and I tried to steer us around it. "We can't treat Stonewell like a filler," I told Ethan in one-on-one. "They're about to scale. They will remember who stood next to them before the charts got pretty." He nodded and said, "Great point. Put something on paper." I did. He sent it back with tracked changes that shifted "we should" to "I propose," and my name fell out of the top line. I breathed through my nose and kept going, not because I liked it. Because I wanted the thing to exist in the world, even if my name didn't sit on the first page. When the Stonewell product hit shelves, it sold faster than the forecast. Not a miracle, a process. We had listened. We had told the truth. We had made it easy for the people who wanted it to find it. Northbridge sent a company-wide email with a graph that made a beautiful slope. Ethan CC'd the executive team and wrote, "Proud of our leadership here." I clicked into the email. My name was there, nestled in a sentence about support. I closed the email and opened my task list. Work has a way of soaking up your feelings if you let it. There were happy moments I let myself have. The day Noah stopped by the office with a bag of products and a grin that wouldn't quit. He left samples on my desk and told me my words were printed on a shelf talker in 400 stores. I drove to a grocery that night and walked the aisle like I was looking for something I had lost and then found. There they were, the colors, the copy, the people picking them up and dropping them into their carts like it was nothing, like it was everything. I stood between the cereal and the snacks, and I thought, this is it. This is what I always wanted, to make something that lives outside of my inbox, to make something people can hold. Maybe that's why the demotion cut as deep as it did, because it wasn't just a title or a seat in a meeting. It was a line between me and the thing I helped bring into the world. It was someone else putting their name on a chapter they didn't write. At Northbridge, there's a row of small offices for directors. Ethan's door was always open just enough to suggest approach. Inside, there were stacks of industry magazines and a diploma in a frame. On his shelf, next to a cactus that never grew, there was a photo of the team from a retreat. I was in the corner of that photo with a paper cup and a laugh that wasn't staged. When I first saw that photo, I thought it meant I belonged. And maybe we all did, in ways that didn't look the same. But belonging is a promise people make with actions, not plaques. As winter came, the days got shorter and the pressure grew. Stonewell wanted to enter a new region. We had a strategy ready. It needed care. More hands, not fewer. I made the case in a meeting that started late and ended with "we'll take it offline." Offline turned into a calendar invite that never arrived. A week later, I learned Ethan had pitched the expansion plan without me. He called it simple and bold. I called it shallow and risky. He won, for the moment. Through all of it, I did what I always do. I wrote. I met deadlines. I showed up at the plant when they asked. I sent Vivian a tip about an upcoming cost shift I'd caught in a supplier forum, and she beat it by a week, saving them more than any campaign could earn in a month. She sent me a smiley face made of parentheses and a colon, the kind you send when you're too busy to write a poem, but you still want to say you see someone. I didn't know it then, but the seeds were already planted. In between the good work and the small cuts, someone was making a plan. They were adding up my salary and my hours and my silence and deciding it was time to shuffle me to the side. "Free up budget," they'd say with a straight face and an email already drafted. And I would sit in a room and hear the words like I was underwater. But the thing about people like me is this: we hear the current as much as we feel it. We know when a shift is coming. And even when it knocks the breath out of us, we find our feet again. Because we didn't climb by accident. If I could go back and whisper something to that version of me, the one driving to the plant with the sun just rising, the one who believed that good work would always shield her, I'd tell her this: keep caring. But watch the room. Save the receipts. And when you get pushed, don't push back the first way they expect. Step aside, let them walk, and stay ready. The truth has a way of coming back around, like a product on a conveyor, like a line you wrote that finds its real home years later. The world before looked steady. It felt earned. It was real, but it was also fragile in the places I didn't want to see. And it was about to be tested in ways that would show me exactly who was who, and who I was when the lights flickered and the air went cold. The Monday after the meeting felt like a Monday after a storm. The building looked the same, but everything inside it had been rearranged by wind you couldn't see. I came in early. I didn't want to, but habit runs ahead of hurt. Habit turns on the light. Habit makes coffee. Habit opens the laptop even when your hands are a little shaky. My calendar was a wall of gray. Little boxes with titles that used to have my initials at the end now read lead, Marcus. The Stonewell Weekly WIP. I'd been downgraded from presenter to notes. I laughed out loud at that, not because it was funny, because if I didn't laugh, I was going to say something I couldn't take back. I marked it accepted and kept breathing. In our team chat, a new channel appeared overnight, Stonewell Core. The lock icon next to it looked like a joke without a punchline. I clicked anyway. "You do not have permission." Okay, got it. I sent Marcus a welcome note. I meant it. "Got your back," I wrote. "Stonewell is about rhythm. I'll share the lay of the land. We'll make this smooth." He replied with 3 rocket emojis and a legend. I stared at the word. I'd have preferred thank you. The WIP started at 9 on the dot. Ethan arrived fashionably late, which meant 11 minutes after the hour, when the awkward small talk had melted and everyone had slid into their careful chairs. He took one look around the room and smiled like he'd planned the seating. "Let's roll," he said. Marcus went first. He pulled up a deck with a crisp cover and a new line on slide 2, simple and bold. The letters were big and confident. My stomach did a small flip. "Walk us through the thinking," Ethan said, leaning back like he was in a commercial for confidence. Marcus nodded. "Stonewell needs a fresh angle," he said. "The real food, real people thing has been great, but we should punch. Less heart, more heat. Bolder visuals, bigger claims." I felt my jaw tighten. He wasn't wrong about needing to evolve. He was wrong about throwing away the part of the brand that was a promise. I raised my hand slightly, not to undercut. To add context, 2 cents, I said. Ethan's eyes flicked to me, then back to the room. Let Marcus lead, he said, smooth. We'll do a full group build after. I put my hand down. I wrote a note to myself, don't react, record. Marcus kept going. He listed influencers who had never set foot in a plant. He proposed a Flash Friday that would yank the price down for a weekend. He suggested a stunt with a celebrity chef who, fun fact, was in a legal fight about faking reviews 2 years ago. It was shiny. It was loud. It ignored everything I knew about Stonewell's buyers and what they trust. When he finished, Ethan clapped once. Strong energy, he said. We'll need Maya's context, of course, but this is the direction. Of course, context. I was a footnote to the vibe. Can I add 3 guardrails? I asked, keeping my voice even. Go, Ethan said, already half glancing at his phone. 1, we can't risk a discount-based habit. Vivian hates training buyers to wait for sales. 2, if we use faces, they need to be people who actually set foot on the line. Trust isn't a prop. 3, we never make claims we can't prove in a spreadsheet. If we promise double, we'd better know where the double comes from. Marcus nodded like he agreed with every word. Totally, he said. We'll calibrate. Calibrate, a fancy way to say we'll rethink later if someone pushes. After the meeting, I found Marcus in a small huddle room. The light in there was too bright. It made everyone look like they were telling the truth even when they weren't sure yet. I closed the door gently. Quick thing, I said. Tomorrow's review with Stonewell, don't call Vivian Vive. She doesn't mind first names, but you need to earn shortening them. It's small, but it matters. Marcus grinned. Noted, love the detail. And Noah will throw a real question at the end, the one he actually cares about. Answer that first. Don't save your best point for the last slide. Got it, he said. Anything else? I held his eyes, not to scare him, to make sure the words landed. Don't claim a 2x lift unless you can show the math. We saw a 2.1 in 3 markets, but it normalizes to 1.4 across the board. Be proud of the 1.4. It's honest. The 2.1 becomes a nice story for why the model works. He nodded again. I like you, he said. You're like all the fine print in one person. Fine print keeps us out of trouble, I said, and let the smallest smile touch my mouth. Back at my desk, I worked on what I called a cheat sheet for him. It wasn't a script. It was a map. I wrote out 5 sentences Vivian would push on and what the honest, clean answers were. I wrote out 3 jokes that would be safe with Noah, funny without trying too hard. I wrote, don't over-explain. If the room is quiet, let it be quiet. Silence doesn't mean you're losing. I sent it to him with a subject line he couldn't miss. Stonewell review, what matters? He replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a this helps. I took a breath and reminded myself that doing the right thing often looks like swallowing a smaller thing for a bigger win later. I don't love swallowing anything that tastes like pride, but I've learned how to chew. Then the small cuts started bleeding a little. The producer looped me out of a shoot schedule and looped in someone I'd never met. We have it covered, she wrote. Enjoy the break. Enjoy, as if I'd asked for one, as if the word didn't land like a paper cut on a week already full of them. Kiana texted me from the plant. You coming to the packaging test? I stared at my calendar. The test was on there for Thursday, but the location link had changed to a private one. Looks like I'm not invited, I wrote. I tried to make it sound like a joke. The typing dots flashed, then stopped, then flashed again. We'll miss you, she sent. They can't read our faces yet. That's what trust looks like up close. You can read each other's faces without words. You can tell when a promise is about to be bent. You don't need a deck to see it. I tried to walk off the heat in my chest by taking a loop around the block. When I came back, there was a group at my desk, Ethan, Marcus, and a creative director. They were looking at my handover doc, not at me, at the words, picking them up and turning them around as if they were theirs. This is gold, the director said. We'll fold it into the deck voiceover. Ethan looked up. We'll make sure to keep your tone, he said like he was paying me a compliment. I nodded. I didn't say keep my tone by keeping my name. I didn't say anything. Not there. Not yet. That afternoon, HR pinged me with a calendar invite for a role transition chat. The subject line had too many words. When people use too many words, it means they're afraid of the truth inside the small ones. We moved it to Wednesday morning. I added it to my wall of gray boxes and kept going. At 6 p.m., the office got that hollow sound it gets when only the people who can't let go of a day are still holding on to it. I was one of them. I opened the Stonewell budget spreadsheet and found the line I knew by heart, contingency. It was the safety net we used when reality laughed at our best plans. I ran my finger down the column and saw what I expected. They shaved it without telling me. Free up budget, right? It always comes from the line that protects the people doing the work. I closed my eyes and saw the plant floor. The steady hum, the warmth, the way people look each other in the eye when the line jams. We don't shave contingency on the floor. We build it in because it's honest about how life moves. Noah texted me a photo of a shelf sign that had gone up slightly crooked in a store in Ohio. Your favorite thing, he wrote. We had a running joke about crooked signs. I always saw them first. Tell them I'll fix it with my mind, I sent back, tapping a little lightning bolt emoji. He replied with a laughing face and then, you set for tomorrow. I looked at the screen for a long 5 seconds. I typed, ready. It was true in a way that mattered. I wasn't the lead, but I was ready to catch if catching became the only way to keep the ball in the air. The next morning, I went early to the glass-walled conference room where we had run the Stonewell review practice a dozen times in the past. It was empty. The deck on the screen was the new one, simple and bold. My notes sat in my folder, full of small truths typed like a heartbeat. Ethan and Marcus arrived a few minutes later. They didn't look nervous. They looked excited. That told me more than anything they said. Remember, Ethan said to Marcus at the door, like a coach who wants to be seen coaching. Own the room, keep it tight, don't let anyone sidebar. Got it, Marcus said. He glanced at me, and for a second he looked like the guy at a party who suddenly realizes he's wearing the wrong shoes. Thanks again for the pointers, Maya, he said. You're a real one. You'll be fine, I told him. I meant it. I wanted him to be fine. I wanted Stonewell to be better than fine. I wanted the truth to win. At the plant, their team had set the big room with coffee and muffins that went untouched. Vivian's binder was, as always, perfectly aligned with the edge of the table. Noah's hoodie said a different city, same sneakers. The screen warmed up to life. We did the dance of hellos and how are yous that actually mean are we okay? And then we began. Marcus opened strong. The big words filled the big screen. He kept his voice clear. He made eye contact. If you didn't know the inside of the story, you'd think it was going exactly how it should go. But I know the faces in that room. I saw Vivian's top eyelid lift a millimeter on slide 4. I saw Noah's mouth stretch into that line he gets when he's holding a question and waiting to see if someone will earn the right to hear it. When the numbers slide came up, Marcus said it. We saw a 2 times lift in target regions. Vivian's finger rested on the table. Tap, tap. Show me, she said. He clicked to the next slide. It wasn't there. Of course it wasn't there. The graph stayed pretty and wide. The footnote that should have been on the bottom right was missing. My chest went warm. I stepped forward 1 inch, just one. If a person could draw a boundary and cross it at the same time, that's what it felt like. The 2x was in 3 clusters, I said, like I was answering a weather question and not a math test. It normalizes to 1.4 overall when you pull in the outliers. The 1.4 is the number you can plan on. The 2x tells us how to build the next version. Every head turned. Marcus hesitated a beat too long. Ethan's jaw moved just enough to count. Vivian looked at me, then back at the screen. Thank you, she said. Her tone didn't change. Her trust in the room did. The rest of the review snapped into place. Marcus took my cues. He gave Vivian what she actually needed, the sober picture with the path to better. Noah asked his real question at the end. If we had to cut one thing to protect the values, what goes? Marcus glanced at me and didn't pretend he hadn't. We cut the stunt, he said. We keep the story. Noah smiled with half his face. That's his yes. We walked out with the kind of quiet that comes after you almost drop a glass and catch it at your waist. Nobody cheers when you don't break something, but you feel it for hours. We were going to be fine, for now. Back at the office, Ethan asked me to step into a small room. The curtain on the window swayed in the AC. I could see a sliver of sky. It made me feel steady. "We need to talk about boundaries," he said. "You can't jump in like that. It undermines the lead." "I corrected a number before it broke," I said. My voice was calm. It surprised me. "That protects the account." He gave me the smile he uses instead of saying the word problem. "It's optics," he said. "We want Marcus to be the voice." "Then make sure the voice says the truth," I said, and held my own gaze steady enough that he looked down first. He didn't answer. He didn't have to. His silence said it all. He wanted the win more than he wanted the way we got there. I left the room feeling both lighter and more tired than I had all week. The packaging test I'd been looped out of, it went sideways. The die cut was off by a hair. A hair is enough. They lost an hour. Kiana texted me a photo of a stack of labels and wrote, "Your favorite thing X100. We both needed the small laugh that rolled out of that text, but it made me ache. I should have been there. Around noon, the PR team posted a plant story. They tried to recreate the magic of Kiana's safety video. They used a stock voiceover with a line about farm to factory that made my teeth hurt. The comments under the post were polite and empty. The ones in the employee group were not. "Who are these people?" someone wrote. "Where are the real faces?" Another person tagged Kiana with a picture of her elbow from the old video like a protest poster. Vivian pinged Ethan and me in a separate email with no subject. It just said, "This is not us." That's a sentence that either breaks you open or helps you stand up. For me, it was both. We moved fast. I wrote a draft for a new piece featuring Kiana and a line leader named Lewis. Simple language, real faces, straight camera. "We make it here," I wrote at the top. "And we're proud." Marcus sent it to the client with his name on the doc. I saw my words on the screen without my name and felt that old heat rise. I swallowed it. I marked my calendar. Receipts. By Friday, the store reports told a story no one wanted to read. Units up Friday, down Sunday through Wednesday. Net down week over week. Margin hurt. Retailer compliance getting noisy. In the middle of it all, a small error made a loud noise. A press release went out with an inflated ROI number. It wasn't mine. It wasn't anyone. It came from nowhere and landed everywhere. Vivian's email this time was 5 lines. "Where did this number come from? Who approved this? Pull it." Retract with corrected figure and apology. Marcus came to my desk, eyes wide. "I need help," he said. No rockets, no legend. Just a person who knew the water was high and the boat was small. "Write the retraction," he said. "Please." "Of course," I said. "I'm going to put my name on it." He nodded. "Yes, please." I wrote it fast and clean. "We misstated a figure in our earlier release. The corrected ROI is number. We regret the error. Our focus remains on honest results and the people who make them possible." I put my name in the footer. My full name, not a team. A person accountable. We sent it. The storm didn't pass, but the wind shifted. When you tell the truth, sometimes the room breathes differently. Vivian replied with one word, "Thank you." That night I was packing up when Ethan tapped my desk. "War room, 10 minutes. "I'm off," I said. I used my calm voice, the one I use when the line hums and the fix is simple. "If we need a weekend push, send scope and we'll define terms." He looked at me like I'd spoken a language he didn't think I knew. "Terms," he said. "Yes," I said. "If I'm doing crisis work outside my defined hours, we scope it. That's what we would do for any client. We should do it for our own people, too." He laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You've changed." "No," I said. "I've stopped changing for the wrong reasons." At home, I put my phone face down on the counter and poured water into a glass like it was something special. It is. Hunger and thirst and rest and quiet and saying no when no is the right word. These are the small things that keep you from breaking in half. The glass was halfway to my lips when the phone lit up. Noah, not a text, a call. My heart did that little dance it does when something you've been trying not to expect shows up right on time. I stared at the name. I let it ring once, Twice. I picked up on 3. Maya, his voice had that buzz in it that says someone been in a room all day and didn't like the air. Do you have 5? He didn't say what for. He didn't have to. I could hear it in the way he exhaled, in the space between the words. Something had shifted on their side of the table, too. The line between tolerance and decision. It's quiet until it is. I took a breath. I have 5, I said, and I'm listening. Maya, do you have 5? I could hear the plant in Noah's voice, even through the line. Machines in the background. A door opening and closing. Someone laughing in a hallway like they were trying to keep it down. I have 5, I said, then added the thing that mattered. I should say this up front. I can't discuss anything that breaks my obligations to Northbridge. I won't cross lines, but I can listen. He let out a breath I felt in my shoulder. Good, because I don't want lines crossed. I want the truth. We're not okay. The discount hurt more than anyone said it would. The ROI thing made us look sloppy. The plant is tired. Vivian's tired. I'm tired. Silence sat with us for a second. I looked at the glass of water in my hand and tried to keep my heart from racing ahead of my head. I know, I said, quiet. I've watched it from our side and I've felt it from yours. Who approved Flash Friday? He asked, even though he already knew from my email. He wanted to hear me say it out loud to test the ground. Was it you? No, I said. I advised against it in writing. I don't say that to throw anyone. I say it because the record matters. He didn't answer right away. The air between us changed. You always cared about the record, he said, softer. You had a way of making the messy feel like it had a path. I swallowed. The part of me that still wanted to fix everything reached for the door. The part of me that had learned to stand still kept my hand on the knob. What do you need, Noah? He didn't blink. I can tell even on the phone when he doesn't blink. Vivian wants a clarity pass, not a campaign, not a rescue, just clarity, an external audit on our side. Process, numbers, who signs what we stop doing now. She doesn't trust the view she's getting from Northbridge, and I miss your read. If we brought you in directly as an independent, would you consider it? My heart jumped like a light turning on. I looked at the wall where I'd pinned my real proof framework. Promise, process, proof. It looked back at me like a map I'd drawn for this moment without knowing it. I need to be very clear, I said. I have a non-solicit. I won't pitch you. I won't step into Northbridge work. If you approach me for something outside their scope, a clarity audit to help you make internal decisions, and if I disclose it and get a written conflict waiver, then yes, I can consider it. But I won't break the rules to help anyone, not even you. I wouldn't ask you to, he said. Vivian will formalize procurement, legal, all the boring things you love. I laughed despite myself. I do love boring armor. He lowered his voice. We're up against the auto renew. I won't make you part of a pressure game. I'm telling you the clock because the clock is real. I understand, I said. Send a formal request to my company, Bluefinch Strategies. Keep it clean. I'll loop my counsel and HR. If I can't get the waiver, I won't proceed. If I can, my scope will be tight. You'll get a memo and a conversation. No leaks. No surprises. And if at any point you feel this puts you in a bind with Northbridge, we stop. We do it right, or we don't do it. He was quiet for half a breath. This is why I called you. When we hung up, I didn't dance or cry or call 3 friends. I opened my laptop and typed an email to Ava. Subject, potential independent advisory, need guardrails. I told her everything. She called me 5 minutes later, the cafe sound in her voice even when she wasn't in one. We can do this, she said. But we do it like you said, in daylight. You disclose, you ask for a written waiver. You define the scope as internal advisory that doesn't touch creative, media, or deliverables inside Northbridge's SOW. You confirm they approached you, not vice versa. You do it outside work hours. You use your own framework, not internal materials. And you document everything. If Northbridge tries to weaponize policy after you comply, that's on them, not you. Okay, I said. My hand was steady on the mouse, steadier than it had been in weeks. 15 minutes later, a new email crawled into my inbox with the kind of subject line that makes you sit up a little straighter. Request for independent advisory services, Stonewell Foods. From Vivian Cho. CC, Noah, Stonewell Legal, Stonewell Procurement. The body was crisp. Maya, Stonewell Foods requests a short-term external advisory engagement focused on clarity of process, decision rights, and financial guardrails related to marketing investments. This advisory is internal to Stonewell. It will not overlap with any marketing services currently provided by Northbridge Agency. We understand the need for compliance on your end and confirm this outreach is initiated by Stonewell, not solicited by you. If feasible, please send and SOW, proposed timeline 10 business days, and fee. My eyes stung a little, not from sadness, from the relief of seeing a sentence that respected the truth. I opened a new doc and drafted the SOW for Blue Finch Strategies. Scope, clarity audit, promise/process/proof. Deliverables, 1 executive memo to CFO outlining current state risks and recommended guardrails. 2, 1 working session with brand and finance to align decision rights. 3, 1 page of truth checks for future Northbridge approvals, claims, discount triggers, PR numbers. Exclusions, any creative development, media buying, public-facing copy, or internal Northbridge materials. Timeline, 10 business days. Fee redacted. Conflicts, I am currently employed by Northbridge Agency. Engagement contingent on written conflict waiver from Northbridge HR. No solicitation. Stonewell initiated. Confidentiality mutual. I attached my W-9, my tiny blue Finch logo, and a cover email that said the only 3 things that needed saying. Thank you for the clarity. I will do this only with a written conflict waiver. I will not cross the lines that keep trust in place. Then I did the thing most people skip because they're afraid of the answer. I told Northbridge. Hi, Keisha, I wrote to HR. Per policy, disclosure of potential outside work. Stonewell Foods has requested a short-term internal clarity advisory from my independent company, Blue Finch Strategies. Scope is non-overlapping with Northbridge SOW, process guardrails audit only. Initiation confirmed by Stonewell, attached. I request a written conflict waiver with any additional guardrails you recommend. I will recuse from any Northbridge internal discussion that would create a conflict during the advisory window. All work will be outside my Northbridge hours, using my own framework and no Northbridge resources. Please advise. I hit send and sat back. My heart did that flutter it does when you let go of a step and trust the ground to be there. Then I texted Ava. Sent. She replied with a scales of justice emoji and, proud of you. Keisha wrote back by mid-afternoon. Thanks for disclosing. We'll review and revert. Ethan found out before revert happened. He showed up at my desk with that tie pulled tight like it was holding something in. Can we talk? He asked, the words light and the air heavy. We went into the small room with the swaying curtain. I could see the sliver of sky. It helped. I heard you're shopping yourself to Stonewell, he said, and the word shopping landed like a pebble thrown at a window. No, I said. They contacted me for a limited internal advisory to help them set guardrails. I disclosed per policy. I asked for a waiver. I won't proceed without it. That's a conflict, he said. It's only a conflict if it overlaps with our work or if I hide it. I'm doing neither. I'm recusing from Stonewell internal calls here during the advisory if approved. And I won't touch creative or media or anything that belongs to Northbridge. He shook his head like the conversation was a fly he couldn't get to leave him alone. This looks bad. Looking good isn't our job, I said calmly. Being honest is. Stonewell asked for the truth. I can help them find it without breaking rules. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He wasn't used to me asking for permission in a way that couldn't be easily denied. The policy was on my side. The timing wasn't on his. At 5:42 p.m., Keisha replied. Conditional approval granted. Guardrails attached. Please confirm receipt and recusal. CC. Marla. The guardrails were exactly what I'd promised. No overlap, no resources, outside hours, recusal from Northbridge's Stonewell decisions for 10 business days. I signed, scanned, and sent it back before anyone could change their mind. I wrote Noah and Vivian a short note. Conditional approval received from my employer with attached guardrails. confirming next steps. I will recuse from Northbridge Stonewell discussions during this window. Please send times. They did. We set 3 morning sessions, 6:38:00 a.m. before my office day began. We set one Saturday for the working session. I built a wall in my calendar like a fortress, blue blocks and gray blocks. The space between them was small but enough. The first morning, I sat at my kitchen table with the sun still deciding whether to show up and opened a secure video room. Vivian joined first. She looked the same and different, edges sharper, eyes more tired. "Thank you for doing this right," she said without preamble. "It's the only way it works," I said. Noah joined. He had a mug that said probably coffee and a look that said definitely stress. We started with promise. "Tell me in 8 lines what we promise buyers," I said, tapping my pen. Not a slogan, a promise. Noah talked about taste and time and not insulting the people who cook on weeknights after long days. Vivian added, "We promise our numbers are boring and true." "Good," I said. "That's the anchor, now show me where we drifted." They did discount habit, borrowed faces, inflated claim. We mapped them like you map a river after a flood, where the banks gave, where the debris piled up. We moved to process. Who approves what? I asked. Who hits send? Where does risk sit? Who can say no when yes will hurt later? Vivian slid a chart onto the screen that made me want to hug her. It was neat and wrong. "It was clear," she said. "We got fast and messy. We redrew it. Sign-offs where they should be. Numbers signed by finance before they go out, not after. PR claims passing through a truth check as normal, not as an insult. Discount triggers requiring 3 names, not 1 whim. Then proof. What do you measure and when do you tell the truth about it? I asked. We made a cadence that didn't care about moods. Monday numbers. Friday forecasts. A template that makes lie-adjacent numbers feel uncomfortable enough to put themselves back on the right side. When we were done with that first session, nobody smiled. It wasn't a smile day. It was a day where the blood came back into your fingers after being cold for too long. "Same time tomorrow," Vivian said. "Same," I said. That Saturday, we held the working session with a small group. Vivian, Noah, the head of sales, and Kiana, because I asked for her. "If we rebuild guardrails and ignore the floor, the next bump will send us into a wall," I said. "We need the floor in the room." She came in with flour on her jacket from a morning batch and a look that meant she wouldn't waste a second. When we talked about claims, she told a story about a label that confused a line worker and how that confusion cost them 20 minutes that day. It landed harder than any slide. By the end of the 10 days, I had a memo that felt like something you put in a safe. Clean, heavy, useful. It wasn't a hit piece. It didn't name and shame. It named patterns and put a hand on the lever that moves them. Vivian read it in front of me on the video call, her eyes scanning fast. She reached the end and looked up. For the first time in weeks, something in her face softened. "This is the voice we lost," she said, "and the spine." Noah just nodded, like he was afraid words would ruin it. "We'll brief the board," Vivian said. "If we change course, it won't be because we panicked. It will be because the numbers and the process tell us to." "And whatever you decide," I said, "you'll have a map." They signed the invoice within an hour. I saved the payment confirmation like it was a postcard from a future I could almost see. Then I did the thing that held the whole plan together. I wrote a note to Keisha and attached my completion memo, not the content, just the cover page with the dates. "Advisory complete," I wrote. "Recusal window closed. Thank you for the approval and guardrails." She replied with a thumbs-up emoji and a thanks. On Monday, I walked back into the office the way you walk back into a house you've emptied one room of and painted another. It was the same. It was. Ethan nodded at me in the hallway like we hadn't been on opposite sides of a sentence for 10 days. Marcus gave me a quick smile that didn't reach his eyes. I sat down, opened my laptop, and waited for the next thing I'd already seen coming. Because when you tell the truth in one room, it tends to knock on the other doors. And it was about to start pounding. They didn't knock, they kicked. At 10:14 a.m., a calendar invite hit my inbox like a dropped plate. Subject, Urgent Conflict Policy Review. From Marla. Attendees, Marla CFO, Keisha HR, Ethan Director, Legal at Northbridge. I stared at it long enough for the screen to dim, then lit it back up with one touch. 10:30. I grabbed my notebook, the one with the word receipts on the cover in my own handwriting, and walked into a room that felt colder than the hallway. Marla opened with a smile that wasn't hungry or kind. It was the middle space people use when they don't want to show you the part that will bite. Maya, she said, we appreciate your disclosure. After further review, we have concerns. Your external engagement with Stonewell creates an appearance of conflict and may violate your duty of loyalty. Appearance of conflict, I repeated, then let the words sit. Can we start by clarifying what, if anything, overlapped with our SOW? Legal spoke next, a man with a voice like a dry stapler. We haven't seen the content of your advisory. Correct, I said, because it was internal to Stonewell. My scope was process audit and financial guardrails, excluded creative, media, PR execution, everything under our SOW, approved conditionally by Keisha last week, with guardrails I signed. Keisha cleared her throat. That's true, she said quietly. We issued a conditional approval with restrictions. Marla kept going like we'd all agreed to say the alphabet out of order. Regardless, we can't have a senior strategist advising a client on how to manage us. Ethan nodded, eager. It undercuts Marcus. I turned to him slowly. So does sending out inflated ROI numbers. Silence. The stapler voice didn't staple. It just looked up from a legal pad. I set my folder on the table and slid a copy of the signed approval across to Marla. I disclosed. HR approved. I recused from Stonewell internal here during the window. I worked outside hours, used my own framework, and did not share any Northbridge materials. I also corrected a public misstatement last week to protect the client and us. That seems aligned with loyalty to the truth, which our policy specifically encourages. I tapped a line I'd highlighted in the handbook. Employees are expected to report concerns about accuracy and integrity without fear of retaliation. The word sat between us like a stone dropped in a shallow bowl. Retaliation. Marla exhaled through her nose, slow. No one is retaliating. We're managing a risk. I nodded. Then let's manage it with facts. I slid another paper across. Vivian's formal request with the line bolded. This outreach is initiated by Stonewell, not solicited by you. Then the SOW scope with the exclusions lit up like runway lights. Then the email from Keisha, conditional approval granted. Ethan shifted in his chair. He didn't like the runway lights. They left less room for mood. Legal cleared his throat. We can require you to cease any further work with Stonewell while employed by Northbridge. You can, I said, and I will respect that if you put it in writing and apply it evenly going forward. But we should also be clear about what happens next. If you withdraw a previously granted approval after the fact and attempt to discipline me for complying with it, while I've raised concerns about accuracy on a high-risk account, that starts to look like retaliation. And if we're talking about appearances, I have an email I received in error that outlines a plan to demote and separate me while using my work and restricting my client access under the language of budget. I've not acted on it because I've been focused on doing my job. But if we're talking about risk, we should put all the risk on the table. Marla's eyes clicked to mine like something heavy had just landed in her mind. What email? I opened my folder. I slid a printed copy of Marcus's me-sent email and Ethan's reply across the table. The header and the timestamp were clean. The words everyone in the room knew in their bones were now in the light. Ethan's face, when a shade I'd only seen twice. Once when a client asked a question he couldn't answer. And once when he realized he'd sent a deck without clearing a legal claim. That's an internal planning email, he said, voice tight. It was sent to me, I said. Unsolicited. I didn't go digging. I didn't forward it. I saved it because it named a plan that affected my job and the client, and because it used language that framed lies as alignment. Keisha looked uncomfortable in a way that made me like her more. We should take a break, she said. Legal needs to review this. Marla tapped the email with one finger like she wasn't sure the paper was real. We'll reconvene at 3, she said. I walked out into the hallway and felt a shaking inside me I didn't show on my face. My body knew this was a tilt moment, a hinge, the kind that either slams or swings open. Back at my desk, my phone buzzed. A new email from Vivian. Subject, board working session, invite. Maya, please join tomorrow as external advisor for the first 30 minutes to summarize your clarity memo. We will discuss contract decisions. Your presence is requested to answer CFO-led questions only. This is an internal Stonewell meeting. My breath caught. This was the room where decisions would stop pretending they weren't already being made. I replied with one line, confirmed and thank you. Then I forwarded the invite to Ava with one sentence, see attached advisory fulfillment continuing, internal only. She replied with a thumbs up and, you're covered, be calm, be clear. At 3, we went back into the cold room. Legal had friends now, another voice on the speaker. They asked procedural questions. When did you disclose? What did you send? Who did you copy? Each answer landed with a timestamp and a reference. Receipts. Finally, Marla closed her folder. We're not going to discipline you for the advisory, she said, each word like a brick she had to move. We will, however, require that you do not accept any further engagements with Stonewell while employed here. Understood, I said. The advisory is complete. Ethan couldn't help himself. You went around us, he said, small and sharp. No, I said. I walked upright on a path you could see. You didn't like where it led because it took away the fog. The meeting ended with no handshakes. Keisha met my eyes as we stood. There was tired and there was sorry in there. I appreciated both. On my way back to my desk, Marcus intercepted me near the snack shelf like a person stepping into a stream without shoes. I messed up, he said, voice low. He didn't have to say which mess. The email, the numbers, the discounts, the face, all of it. You're in a system, I said gently. It rewards speed and shine, but Stonewell isn't built on that. If you want to lead, lead like they do, with proof. He nodded, eyes glassy. I read your memo, he blurted out, then reddened. Vivian sent it to me. I know she didn't mean to. She CC'd a wider group by accident. It was clean. It made me feel like I had a railing to hold. I almost laughed, not at him, at the way the world insists on giving you the poetry you don't expect. Hold it, I said. It's for everyone. That night I prepared for the board session. Not with slides, with sentences, 10 lines, each a truth you could not knock over. Our promise is trust, not noise. Discounts train waiting, not buying. Claims are currency. Counterfeit ruins economies. Real faces carry more than borrowed fame. Finance should sign numbers before they go out, not after. PR needs truth checks like a plant needs safety checks. Contingency isn't fluff, it's honesty about life. Quiet weeks matter as much as Friday spikes. If you can't prove it in a spreadsheet, don't say it in a headline. Guardrails aren't punishment, they're how you go fast without crashing. I wrote them by hand. I read them aloud until my voice felt like it belonged to them. In the morning, I told Keisha I'd be in a late, off-site call from 9 to 10. True, I didn't tell Ethan what room I was walking into, not because I'm sneaky, because I've learned to stop inviting people to watch me be brave just so they can clap at the wrong time. The board call opened in a square of faces. Vivian in the top left, steady. Noah 2 squares down, hoodie again, jaw set. 2 directors I didn't know. The CEO, a man I'd met once in a hallway, the head of sales. Kiana was not there. This was numbers and direction, not hands and machines, but I felt her anyway. Vivian introduced me clean. Maya led a third-party clarity audit for us. She will give a 5-minute overview of her memo, then we will ask questions. I spoke like I was reading instructions in a storm. Slow, clear, no fluff. I told them where we drifted and how we get back. I didn't say Northbridge. I didn't hint. I stayed on our side of the street and kept my eyes on the horizon. The CEO asked one question. Can we do this without disrupting the work in market? Yes, I said. If you make guardrails normal and stop making truth feel like a special occasion. He smiled with half his face. I wondered if he learned that from Noah or Noah learned it from him. When I signed off, Vivian sent a text 4 minutes later. Thank you, decision tomorrow, brace. Brace, I ate toast I didn't taste and answered emails I didn't remember sending. Around noon, a new kind of message hit, a calendar invite from Ethan to me and Marcus. Subject, Stonewell check-in, prep for renewal. I clicked it and felt my spine lengthen. Renewal. He was still walking the path that assumed they would not change direction. Maybe he knew something I didn't. Maybe he didn't. I accepted and put it next to another invite on my screen. Stonewell board, contract decision. I wasn't invited to that one. Of course not. But the title sat there like the drum you hear before you see the parade. At 4:03 p.m., Marla stopped by my desk with a face I couldn't read. We expect news tomorrow, she said. No sudden moves, please. Then she walked away. No sudden moves. It's what people say when the wind is up and they hope their house is built better than they remember. That night, I stood by my window and looked at the city lights. The cranes were still for once. The street was soft. I thought about every person who had fed this story. Kiana with flour on her jacket, Noah with his probably coffee, Vivian with her straight binder, Keisha with her tired kindness, Ava with her pen, Marcus with his eyes finally clear, Marla with her measured words, Ethan with his tie too tight. Me with my folder of receipts and my small bird logo that started to look like more than a joke. You know that moment before the storm hits and the air is too quiet? That's where I was, not afraid, awake, ready. They had tried to use policy to keep the fog thick. I had used the policy to make a path. They had a story. I had the truth. Tomorrow, we'd see which one the numbers believed. The decision hour didn't arrive like a drum. It arrived like a clock, 10 o'clock. The kind of time that makes people sit straighter without noticing. I logged into the board call from a small conference room with a window that looked at the river. The water was flat, like it was holding its breath too. Vivian opened the meeting with a nod. The board's faces were set in their usual careful lines. Noah sat with his legal pad and a pen that he spins when he's thinking. The CEO had his camera on and his hands folded. The head of sales, 2 directors, and a counsel whose jacket never wrinkles. On our side, Marla's stack of papers was square. Ethan took the head of the table on their end again, as if seats make decisions. Thank you, Vivian said. We have 3 items: performance reality, process integrity, and vendor path. She clicked to a slide that wasn't a slide. It was a table with numbers that didn't need decoration. Friday spike, 4-day valley, net negative, margin hit, retailer variance. This is the cost of Flash Friday, she said. This is the cost of claims we couldn't sign with our eyes open. This is the cost of borrowed faces. Ethan started to speak, context matters, but she lifted a hand, polite, not theatrical. The context is the numbers. We're not here to debate the weather. We're here to decide whether to take down the umbrella or build a roof. She shifted to a page with 3 columns. Left, guardrails, middle, status, right, owner, freeze discounts, active sales, verify claims, active finance. Truth check, Fridays, active brand and finance, plant first storytelling, active brand, packaging hair check, active plant. I felt something settle in my chest. This wasn't a speech. It was a spine. Northbridge, Vivian said. You will have a chance to speak to your plan for execution under these guardrails. Ethan stood a hair taller. We believe our model team depth is the best path to scale. We've implemented course corrections, and we're confident we can deliver the momentum Stonewell expects. We've prepared a plan that. Ethan, the CEO said, gentle but firm, before we hear a plan, answer a simple question. Who approved Flash Friday? He paused for a beat he couldn't afford. We, aligned as a team. Names, the head of sales said. We run accountability here with names. Ethan glanced to his right. Marla didn't save him. She never saves anyone in the middle of a question. I signed as director, he said finally. Was Maya's guardrail note acknowledged? Vivian asked. He cleared his throat. She sent an email with concerns. The CEO looked at me. Maya, he said, is that accurate? Yes, I said even. I flagged the risk in writing with alternatives. Approval was not in my scope post-transition. No one nodded. The truth doesn't need applause. Next, Vivian said, the ROI misstatement. Where did the number come from? The PR team pulled a draft figure from a projection, Ethan said. It was an oversight. Who checked it? The CFO asked. Her face was a glass of water set exactly in the middle of a table. Not finance, Marla said. It cost her something to say it that cleanly, but she did. We've adjusted the path. We'll sign off before numbers go public. We already started, I added. We issued a retraction with a corrected figure and an apology. My name was on it. It's done. Thank you, the CEO said. He made the word sound like a direction, not a praise. Now the path, Vivian said. We asked for key personnel, named strategist with approval rights on strategy and claims. Northbridge declined. We moved to month. We appointed an independent advisor for process, Blue Finch for 10 business days. That's done. We stabilized the week. Thank you. She looked at me for 1 second and then back at the board. The question before us now is simple. Do we continue with Northbridge, revert to the original team with named strategist as requested, or do we terminate and open an RFP for execution under Blue Finch oversight? The room did that quiet thing again, the sound a room makes when it knows the fork in the road is real. Nobody moved. Nobody coughed. Noah's pen stopped spinning. My hands stayed still on the table. Ethan leaned forward. We're prepared to offer concessions, he said quickly. We can name Maya in a support capacity. Not support, Noah said. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. You know what works, name it or don't. Ethan's smile went thin. We can't allow a client to dictate staffing. The CEO tilted his head as if someone had asked him if the sky was negotiable. We can dictate who we pay and for what. That's business. Ethan tried one more turn. We're not a freelancer collective. We're an agency with a model. It's not healthy to build dependencies on one person. Vivian didn't flinch. We asked you to build accountability around that person, not worship them. We asked you to put guardrails that make accuracy non-negotiable. We asked you to stop discounting the brand we spent years building. You said no. We heard you. Marla spoke softly. We can accept the key personnel request if that keeps the relationship stable. The board looked at each other. The CEO looked like a man who had found the knot in a rope and decided not to pretend it wasn't there. Thank you, Vivian said. We're past that. This is our decision. She clicked to one more slide. It had no color, just 3 sentences. Stonewell will terminate the Northbridge agreement at the end of the current month-to-month term per clause 8.2. We will open an immediate RFP for execution partners under our revised guardrails. We will retain Blue Finch as strategic advisor for a 6-month oversight term to ensure process discipline and truth checks. No theater, no sting, a decision set down like a cornerstone. Ethan's face went still. The creative director blinked too many times in a row. Marla's jaw tightened and then relaxed. I saw her swallow. Marcus, on the side camera, went pale and then pink, the way people do when they understand the moment is bigger than their own story. Ethan found words. We've delivered growth for Stonewell, he said. We've built your brand voice, This is the consequence of misalignment we tried to fix, Vivian said. It's not personal, it's professional. We'll honor outstanding invoices and the transition period. We expect a complete and clean handover of assets, including living files, passwords, and process notes. We expect it without delay, without games, and without needing to ask twice. He opened his mouth again, and the CEO raised a hand. This is final, he said. We thank you for the work that got us here. We won't pay again for the work that moved us back. Then he looked at me. Maya, as Blue Finch, you'll oversee the RFP process. Vendor criteria will be neutrality, proof, and plant literacy. You will not recommend a roster of friends. You will recommend standards. Yes, I said. I'll design the criteria. I won't pick the winners. That's your job. The head of sales smiled with his eyes. Good answer. Meeting adjourned, Vivian said. and closed her binder with a soft click that sounded like an era ending. We all left the call. The quiet afterward was louder than the call. I sat there with my hands on the table and felt a lot of things at once. Relief, but not the kind that makes you float. The kind that puts your feet back on the ground. Sadness for the team that would feel this like a fault line under their desks. Pride for a brand that refused to be handled like a prop. Respect for numbers, for process, for the way Vivian carried a room without raising her voice. My phone buzzed. Kiana. A photo of the plant break room TV with the company's Slack post on it. The guardrails, the video view count climbing, the value hold message to retailers. She wrote, "We're okay, proud." I typed back, "You did that, keep it steady." In my inbox, 2 emails popped up like opposite ends of a seesaw. From Vivian, "We'll send a formal termination notice this afternoon. Please outline transition tasks, blue Finch scope attached." From Ethan, "We'll need you in a room at 2, bring everything." I went to the 2 p.m. room. Ethan was there, Marla, Keisha, and a project manager who looked like she wished she was. Ethan didn't sit. "We need all Stonewall files on the shared drive by end of day," he said. "We need a narrative for the internal team. We need a list of what you've given to the client as Blue Finch." "You'll have the files," I said. "You already have the narrative, I wrote the process. And Blue Finch advice was internal to Stonewall. You'll see the outcomes, guardrails, scripts, sign-offs because they'll use them. That's the point." "You think you won," he said, like the word had a taste he didn't like. "I wasn't playing your game," I said. "I was protecting a brand and myself." He laughed without smiling. "You're leaving anyway." "Yes," I said. "I submitted my resignation last week, effective at the end of transition, per HR. I'll do the handover right." Marla cleared her throat. "We appreciate that," she said. She meant it. Keisha slid a checklist across the table. "Handover," she said. "Asset inventory, passwords, open tasks, contacts. We'll run it like we always should." "We should also run something else," I said, and slid a sealed envelope to Keisha. "My formal response to the misaddressed email I received. It's in your record. I didn't send it to the client. I won't. But HR should have the full picture, not a threat, a truth for the files." Keisha nodded, eyes soft. "Thank you." Ethan looked like he wanted to say something sharp. He didn't. The words didn't come. Left speechless, not because I took his voice, but because the room no longer accepted the story he liked to tell. I spent the rest of the day doing the unglamorous work that keeps the wheels from falling off. I zipped folders. I labeled with plain names. I sent a full contact list with notes like small poems. Vivian precision first, then questions. Noah humor hides the real question, answer that. Kiana, if she frowns, fix it now. I wrote timelines, risks, and next steps without adjectives. I did it because ethics is not a speech, it's a checklist. At 6:11 p.m., Vivian's formal notice arrive. Termination of MSA per Clause 8, 30 days. Expect clean handover, no backdating, no delays. I read it, I exhaled. I closed my laptop and looked out at the river. The water had ripples now. Movement. Nothing dramatic. Just life doing what it does when you stop holding it in the wrong container. On my way out, I touched the trophy case one more time. The glass felt cooler than last time. The reflection that looked back at me was the same face I'd seen for months, but the eyes had changed. They weren't asking to be seen. They were seeing. In the elevator, a junior copywriter slipped in, flushed, breathless. "Is it true?" she whispered. "Are they really going?" "They," I said, and let the words sit. "We're changing shape. Do your work the way you'd want it to outlive you. That's all that ever holds." She nodded like a promise. The doors opened. We stepped out into a hallway that looked the same and was not. That night, I sent one last email to Noah. "You have this. Guardrails are in. Keep Friday truth checks boring. If it gets loud, go quiet and look at the numbers. Proud of you." He replied with 2 words that took me all the way back to the first time I stood on the plant floor and felt the line hum through my bones. "We're good." I resigned on a Wednesday. I turned in my badge on a Friday. Between those 2 days, I did the work of closing doors like a person who believes in houses. The exit interview was in a small room with soft chairs and a plant that didn't look real but tried. Keisha asked the questions she had to ask. Why are you leaving? What worked? What didn't? Would you recommend this company to a friend? I answered like I'd lived, with calm lines. I'm leaving to build something that fits how I work. What worked was the work, the craft, the teams who care. What didn't was the gap between the stories we told and the way we made decisions when it mattered. I would recommend this place to someone who has a strong spine and a clear sense of what they will and won't do. She typed. She didn't try to fix the past in that room. That's not what exit interviews are for. She did look up at the end and say, I'm sorry we didn't do right by you. It landed, not because it erased anything, because it was human. I packed my desk into a tote that had seen me through too many projects to count. The interns waved from the espresso machine they still hadn't mastered. The creative director squeezed my shoulder and said, You are the only person who ever made me love bullet points. I laughed. It felt good to laugh in that building. Marla passed me in the hallway like a ship that doesn't want to make a wake. She stopped. For what it's worth, she said, you were right about contingency. It was a small olive branch. I took it. For what it's worth, I said, you kept the numbers honest when it mattered. We nodded at each other like people who'd fought a quiet war and could finally put down their pens. Ethan, he didn't come by. That made sense. Some goodbyes only happen on the inside. I walked out the front door with 2 boxes and a spine that felt taller than the building. The sky was a clean blue that made everything look possible. I didn't take a photo. I didn't post a quote. I just stood on the sidewalk and let the air say what it always says if you actually listen. Begin. Blue Finch wasn't an idea anymore. It had a P.O. box, a bank account, a retainer, and a desk that was a table I found at a flea market and sanded myself one Saturday night. I taped my real proof framework on the wall above it with blue painter's tape. Promise, process, proof. The paper looked like a flag. Stonewell signed a 6-month advisory, not a rescue. A rhythm, we formalized board reporting. We launched the plant video with Kiana and Lewis on a Tuesday morning with no fanfare and watched it move like truth moves, quiet and far. The discount freeze held. The weekly truth check made Fridays almost boring. The margin climbed. When we missed, we said it out loud. When we hit, we nodded and kept moving. It sounds unsexy. It's how you build trust that doesn't crack. We opened the RFP with standards, not whispers. No friends list. No secret handshakes. I wrote criteria that could fit on a half sheet and make 100 meetings shorter. Prove you can tell the truth in 8 lines. Show work with people who wear hairnets. Show a claims process that's signed by a CFO before it hits the world. Bring a field plan that respects the person straightening a shelf at 6 a.m. Vendors presented. Some had neon slides. Some had quiet case studies. Stonewell chose a studio with mud on their boots and a math brain behind the camera. We set them up with a runway and guardrails and moved. Blue Finch grew, but not like an explosion, like a plant that finds the sun. I took 2 more clients in adjacent industries because their emails sounded like Vivian's first line. We want discipline, not drama. I set my rates and didn't flinch. I said no when the fit was wrong. I said yes when the work felt like something I could stand under. 2 months in, a message landed in my inbox that I read 3 times before I replied. From Marcus. Subject, thank you. Maya, I'm leaving Northbridge. No drama. I learned a lot, including what not to do. If you ever have space to teach, I'd like to learn. Not looking for a shortcut, just a real path. I stared at the screen, feeling that tug between the past and the present. He had made mistakes that cost me sleep. He had also listened when the world made it hard. I wrote back. Congratulations on choosing. I don't have a role right now, but I do office hours on Fridays for young strategists who want to lead with proof. No charge, no promises. Bring your questions. Leave your ego at the door. If that sounds good, see you Friday at 2. He came, he listened. He asked good questions. He took notes. He didn't use the word legend. We laughed about that. One afternoon, about 3 months after the decision, I drove to the plant to drop off a stack of index cards I'd turned into a truth kit for line leads who wanted to tell their own stories on their breaks. Simple prompts. What did you fix this week? Who taught you something? What number matters to you? Kiana hugged me hard in a way that said the kit was good, but seeing me was better. Lewis filmed his crew answering the cards with a used phone that had a crack no one cared about. Those clips did more for Stonewell's brand than any influencer ever could. When you put a real face next to a number, the number gets a heartbeat. In quieter moments, I sat alone in my office with the window that looks at a tree and wrote down the things I didn't want to forget. When someone says, free up budget, ask them to show their math. Don't fight in hallways, put it in writing. Never let a title stop you from telling the truth that protects the work. Guardrails aren't cages, they're kindness for future you and everyone else. Revenge that isn't rooted in building something better turns to ash. Build. Your worth is not a chair in a room. It's the table you know how to set anywhere you go. One morning, a package showed up with no return address. Inside was a small, hand-carved finch, painted the blue of the tape on my wall. No note, just the bird. I set it on my desk beside the stack of receipts I no longer needed to carry in my bag. Some things you keep anyway, not to prove something to someone else. To remind yourself who you are when the room tries to tell you otherwise. People ask me sometimes if I ever showed the client that misaddressed email. No, I didn't need to. The numbers told the story better. The truth walked on its own legs. My revenge wasn't a reveal. It was a rebuild. It was watching the thing they thought they could take from me become the thing I owned because I refused to carry their version of me out of the building. As for Northbridge, I heard what I always knew I would. They reorged. They announced a new truth first initiative like it was a brand and not a behavior. I hope it sticks. I hope the juniors learn the part I had to learn the hard way. The work has to be honest even when the room wants it faster than the facts can walk. Being loud isn't leadership. Being clear is. If you're listening to this because someone moved you into the shadows and told you to smile while they freed up budget, I want you to hear me. You are not a line item. You are a person whose craft deserves a clean room and a straight path. Save your receipts. Draw your guardrails. Find the boring armor. Tell the truth like it's a habit, not a performance. If they won't let you do that where you are, build a place where you can. Even if it starts with a table you sanded yourself on a Saturday night. I'll leave you with the moment I realized I was okay. It was late. I'd stayed at the plant because I wanted to catch the night shift. They're the ones who keep America moving even when no one claps. Kiana handed me a hairnet. I laughed and put it on. We stood by the safety board and she said, "We'll miss you if you get too busy to come around." "I won't," I said. "This is the point." And it is. The point isn't to win a meeting. The point is to build a thing that lasts outside of it. A brand, a boundary, a backbone. When they demoted me, they thought they were shrinking my world to free up their budget. What they did was free me up to tell the truth louder, cleaner, farther. They lost the client only I could handle because they stopped listening to the person who knew how to carry the truth into the room and set it down without fear. I didn't destroy them. I didn't have to. I built. I watched the numbers correct the story. I watched the right people take the right seats. I watched a plant video outpace an influencer by a mile. I watched a brand remember itself. Justice didn't come with a gavel. It came with a calendar, a checklist, and a quiet pivot toward dignity. If this story found you at the edge of your own decision, I hope it gives you the calm you need to step forward without permission. You don't need a title to lead with truth. You need proof, patience, and the courage to not make your value small so someone else can stand taller. And when you get where you're going, when your own blue finch takes flight, send me a photo. I'll be in some plant or some office, drinking probably coffee, rooting for you. That's how it went for a few days. Little misses, small saves, me doing the work in a shadow I didn't ask for, and then the crack I'd been hearing quietly finally made a sound loud enough to stop me in my tracks. It was an email. It came late on a Thursday when brains are tired and thumbs slip. The subject line read, "Ray, budget alignment M, next steps." I clicked without thinking. That happens when your name is a letter and you've gotten used to reading everything that starts with it. The first line made my skin go cold and then hot again. "Marla," it began, "we can proceed with the plan for Maya." Only the email wasn't to Marla, it was to me. Marcus had auto-filled the wrong M. He was trying to send a note up, and he sent it sideways. I read the first paragraph 3 times. Words shifted and then held. Demote to support through Q1, reduce comp in April, restrict client-facing access to manage risk, ensure she trains Marcus across Stonewall nuances, frame to client as team alignment and budget efficiency. After auto-renew, finalize separation, keep her on copy of key emails to avoid suspicion, avoid unsupervised contact with client. I didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. I didn't blink. I looked at the timestamp 2 minutes ago. I looked at the line, my name, I scrolled. Ethan had replied earlier, adding, "Agree with the timeline, optics matter, use free up budget in talking points. Let's keep her doc style, we can attribute to team learnings while Marcus builds presence." There it was, not just the lie, the instructions for how to hold it together without me while using what I built. They were going to keep my words and my ways and then cut me out of the room I taught them how to walk through. They were going to do it with phrases that fit on a slide. They were going to call it alignment. It wasn't alignment. It was theft with a smile. I didn't write back. Not then. Not ever, not on that thread. I sat very still. I let the shape of the plan settle in my chest. I thought about Vivian's binder, straight as a ruler. I thought about Noah's last questions. I thought about Kiana's line, humming steady even when the light flickered. I thought about the promise I made to myself the night I touched the glass case on the way out of the building. If they wanted to free up budget, I would free up the truth. I took a screenshot. I saved the email. I printed it to a PDF with the timestamp and the header. I put it in a folder labeled with a word that kept me honest: receipts. Then I stood up. I walked to the window that looked out over the city. The cranes were still moving. The people were still tiny. The sky had that late afternoon silver that makes everything look like a scene from a movie. I pressed my palm to the glass. It was cool. My breath fogged a small circle. I drew a dot with my finger and then wiped it away. No more dots. No more almosts. No more hopping the right thing would happen on its own. They had a plan. Now I had one too. The first move, not what you think. It wasn't noise. It wasn't rage. It wasn't calling Vivian and dropping a match into a dry field. It was quieter than that. It was smarter than that. I would do what I always do best, prepare. I would start putting stones in the ground one by one so when the wind picked up, I had something to hold. You ever have a moment like that, where the floor shifts and instead of falling, you decide to plant? That's where I was, and that's where the story turns. I didn't scream. I didn't slam a door. I opened a new folder and named it what it was: receipts. I sat there with the glow of the screen painting my face, and I made a list, not of grievances, but of facts. Dates, times, who said what, where the numbers changed, where the truth was cut to fit a prettier shape. I wrote it all down in calm lines because calm lines don't shake when someone tries to move them. Then I made the second list, the plan. Step 1, don't react, respond in writing. Step 2, read everything. Contract, handbook, policy, the boring armor people count on you never wearing. I pulled up my offer letter, my employment handbook, my non-solicit clause, no non-compete, a 6-month non-solicit on clients I had touched. The words were careful. Solicit meant chase. It did not say if they call you, don't pick up. I wrote that down. I started. I took a photo of that paragraph with the date visible and sent it to myself at home. I printed it and slid the paper into a real folder with the same name as the one on my desktop: receipts. Step 3, counsel. I texted an old colleague who had once left an agency on her own terms. Do you still have the number for the attorney who talked you through it? She sent me a name in under a minute. Ava Patel. Employment and business. No nonsense, kind eyes. We set a call for the next morning at 8. Before that call, I slept like you do after a long drive. Hard, then light, then up before the alarm with a thought sharp and bright in my head. If they were going to use my voice without me, I needed another voice to make it back to me. I met Ava at a small cafe with wide windows. She had a navy blazer and a way of listening that made you hear yourself better. I told her the whole story. She didn't interrupt. She took notes with a pen, not a laptop. That made me trust her more. When I finished, she leaned back for a second and breathed out like she'd been holding it too. Okay, she said. 3 things. 1, you did the right thing taking screenshots and saving emails. Don't go digging in places you're not allowed. Don't access locked channels, keep it clean. 2, don't fight in the hallway. If they push you, ask questions in writing, make them put the story on paper. 3, start building your own runway, quietly. Legally, you can't solicit Stonewell, but if they come to you, you can respond. So be someone worth calling. I laughed, but it came out soft, like a sigh. I don't want to burn anything down, I said. I want to tell the truth and walk away with my head up. Good, Ava said, because fire warms and destroys. Truth just sits there and asks people if they can look at it. And if they can't, that's on them. She gave me 2 templates, one for pushing back on changing job terms, one for refusing to sign a narrative I didn't agree with. Use these, she said, and don't forget to do something nice for yourself today. You're a person, not a case. I promised I would. Then I went home and did the least dramatic thing you can do when you're planning to change your life. I did the dishes. The warm water grounded me. The simple motion made the big thoughts move into their right places. That afternoon was my HR role transition chat. It was me and a woman named Keisha I'd met twice in passing. She had a smile that looked tired and kind all at once. She pulled up a document on the screen and walked me through it like she was reading a bedtime story where the ending had already been written. New title, Senior Strategist Support. Compensation, Review in Q3. Access, by project. Language, alignment, budget efficiency, team depth. I have some questions, I said. Do we have a performance issue on record? Because this reads like a performance plan dressed up in the clothes of alignment. Keisha blinked. People don't usually say that to HR. No performance issue, she said carefully. This is a business decision. Then why does the document ask me to show improvement in areas where I have been leading outcomes? The numbers speak to that. She shifted in her chair. We can adjust the phrasing, she said. What would make you comfortable signing? I thought about it, about the weight of a signature when the story under it isn't true. I won't sign a document that suggests I failed. I'll sign receipt only, with a note. I do not agree with the characterization. She looked relieved. This was not the fight she'd been sent to have. That works, she said. I'll note it. Also, I added, please send me the current non-solicit language and the policy on external work. I want to make sure I'm operating clean. She nodded. I'll send it today. She did. I saved it, receipts. When I left that room, I made the next move on my list. Not loud, quiet. I walked to a bank where the floor is always too polished and you can hear your footsteps like you're in a museum. I opened a business account, Bluefinch Strategies. The name came from a bird my grandmother loved. She said finches are small and stubborn and they always find a way to build a nest where there's wind. I bought a domain on my phone while I was still sitting in the bank chair. Bluefinchstrategy.com. No case studies. No clients. Just a landing page that said, independent strategy for honest brands. I kept it sparse on purpose. This wasn't a billboard. This was a porch light. At home, I made a rate sheet. I set numbers that made my stomach flip, the way they always do when you finally put your value on a page without an apology. I called a friend who's an accountant and asked about quarterly taxes. I watched a tutorial on professional insurance. Boring armor, the best kind. Then I planted stones in the ground at work. I started writing confirmation emails that said, per our conversation, guardrails for Stonewell remain. No discount habit, no unproven claims, real people over borrowed faces. I CC'd the right names. I kept the subject lines clear. I asked for agree-disagree with a deadline. They rarely responded. That was fine. Silence is a kind of answer when the clock is running. Marcus kept stopping by my desk with questions that started with quick and ended with, you always know this stuff. I answered in writing. I copied the producer. I wrote, for the record, this approach protects us. For the record, another stone. I had coffee with Daria, a former boss who had once taught me how to say no without making an enemy. She listened like Ava did with her whole face. You're not wrong, she said, but being right isn't the plan. The plan is to stay steady until gravity helps you. She stirred her tea and added, and Maya, they can take a title. They can't take your hands. Her words fell into my pocket and joined Vivian's. 2 stones, warm, heavy, strong. At night I wrote, not decks, not slides, a framework. The way I think about brands like Stonewell, not their secrets, my method. How I listen, how I choose, how I measure, I gave it a name, real proof. It was a simple outline, promise, process, proof. I printed it and put it on my wall. If they tried to make me small, I would remember the shape of my work. And when the time came, I would offer that shape to people who could see it. I also did something that looked like nothing at all. I set a reminder on my calendar. Stonewell auto-renew date. The day the contract rolls if no one says otherwise. The date mattered. Their email had given me a sketch of their plan. Keep me until it rolls, then cut. If Stonewell was going to make a choice, they needed the truth in time. And the truth needed a clear path to walk. I didn't call Noah. I didn't call Vivian. I did text Kiana a photo of a recipe I'd tried, something we joked about making for the plant crew. She sent back a photo of a tray of muffins and wrote, "Tastier when you're here." I swallowed around that. I told her I'd swing by next week to drop off a donation for their shift fund. No meeting, no agenda, just a wave. She sent a heart. I tucked it away. Work looked the same and not. Ethan was still doing his parade walk with the tie too tight. Marla was still moving numbers around like clouds that didn't know they were about to rain. Marcus still said, legend when he meant thank you. I still came in early and stayed late, but the ground under me felt different. I wasn't waiting to be saved by someone else's good mood. I was building a way out that didn't need permission. The next test came fast, an invite from Ethan, War Room Stonewell Crisis Readiness. I opened it and laughed before I could stop myself. Readiness. We call it that when the crisis has already started and we're trying to write a story where we were heroes all along. I accepted the invite. I packed my folder. I walked into the room like I had all my life. The difference was what I carried in my chest, not hope they'd do right by me. Faith I'd do right by me, no matter what they did. You ever feel that shift? When the power doesn't come from the person with the bigger title, but from the part of you that stopped asking for the wrong yes. That's where I was. And it's a good thing. Because by the end of that week, the cracks we'd been pretending were hairline. They turned into something else. A line that wasn't hair at all, more like a fault. They were about to learn what happens when you swap heart for heat. And I was about to learn what happens when you prepare quietly, then wait for the call. It started with a sale. Flash Friday, Marcus called it in the brainstorm, his voice bright. One weekend, Big Pop will blow the doors off. I had said the words like a bell you hit once so it keeps ringing. Don't train them to wait for a discount. You don't recover trust on price. The slide went up anyway, not in a binder, on shelves, in stores. A red tag where a calm shelf talker should have been. The chart did what charts do when you shock them. It jumped. The spike made people clap in the room that only looks at 1 week at a time. In the room that lives a whole quarter at once, another line moved in the wrong direction. Margin. They'd shaved contingency already. Now they shaved belief. Because after the pop comes the pause. Buyers wait. Retailers ask hard questions. Is this the new price? And when you say no, their faces do the math. Vivian sent an email with 3 sentences and no adjectives. Who approved this? What is the plan to normalize? Expecting answers by 5. At the same time, the influencer went live. She was big in a world that doesn't smell like yeast and pepper and metal. Her kitchen had marble counters and a bowl of fruit that never seemed to rot. She held the new product up and smiled with teeth white enough to make you squint. Stonewall Foods, she said, cheerful as a bell. Stonewall, a different company, a different story. The comments noticed. You got the name wrong, lol, someone wrote. Do you even eat this? Is this an ad? The ad was there, 2 lines down, tiny. The video pulled decent numbers, but that kind of decent is the kind that makes a CFO tilt her head and wonder what else could have been done with the money. Then legal called, not ours, Stonewell's. The claim in the caption was off by a round. Double wasn't double when you looked at the baseline. It was up to 2 times in limited markets. It sounds like a small thing. It is. The post came down. The ad spend was gone. The comment section lived on anyway, screenshot and shared. At the plant, the die cut I'd warned them about finally caught up. The new run came in a hair off, and a hair is enough to jam a line that hums only when everything is true. An hour lost. 2. Kiana texted me a photo of the stack of rejects and wrote, "It's snowing cardboard." I stared at the picture and felt that ache behind my ribs again. I should have been there to catch it in the review. I was. A choice someone else made for me cost them time and money they didn't plan to spend. The stunt, it creaked under its own weight. A chef they'd found agreed to do a pop-up at Harvest Fest. He was famous for a thing that didn't match Stonewell's thing. That mismatch showed up before a single bite was served. The festival had rules about what you could hand out and how you could talk about local sourcing. Our language didn't match their language. We adjusted on the fly, which is a nice way of saying we scrambled and paid overtime. We left with tired feet and a folder of learnings that said what I had said on slide 2 a month before. Don't borrow shine. It doesn't fit. Ethan called a war room the way people light a scented candle after burning dinner. We crowded into a space that always felt a little too small, and he stood by the glass like a director on a set. "We'll control the narrative," he said. "We'll show momentum. This is a bump." A bump is something you feel in your car because the road has a personality. This was a pattern. "We need to stop the discount habit today," I said. "We need to replace borrowed faces with real ones, and we need a one-pager for Vivian that tells the truth in 8 lines." He didn't say yes. He didn't say no. He just kept moving pieces around on the whiteboard as if the pieces would move themselves when they got on a shelf. Marcus looked tired in a way I recognized. It's the tired you feel when you realize the quick win costs more than the slow build. At 9:17 p.m., my phone buzzed. Unknown number. Then the text. "It's Vivian. Can you confirm who approved Flash Friday? Please reply to this email for record." She had CC'd Ethan, Marcus, and Marla. The room went quiet without anyone telling it to. I typed back in calm words that did not shake. "Not me. I advised against in writing on date. See attached. Approval not in my scope post-transition." I attached my guardrail email. I didn't add heat. I didn't need to. The heat was already in the room. It wasn't coming from me. Ethan called a break and asked me into the hall. "We need unity," he said low. "Replying like that makes it look like we're not aligned." "We're not aligned," I said. "We sent something I advised against. We're answering a direct question. I won't lie to make us look tidy." His jaw moved, then stopped. He nodded like he was filing the moment away for later. He probably was. The next morning, my inbox had 3 new fires. A retailer in the Midwest had put up the red tag a day late. Another had kept it up a day too long. The field team sent photos and questions. What do we tell them? The answer is simple. We tell them the truth and we thank them for catching it, then we give them the next date and stick to it. I typed that and sent it. Marcus forwarded it to the field team and wrote, "Our stance." I smiled sadly at the words, "Our, okay, fine."